Just me? Okay.
We have big dreams, and we will do anything to make them come true. Have any of you ever dreamt of working for the greatest supervillain of all time? Well, what if I were to tell you that I am looking for new henchmen?
Les boss, les travail au parli.
I truly believe somewhere out there is a villain with the potential to serve greatness. And it could be any of you.
Wow.
Although, let's not kid ourselves. Truly the only men for this job are Kevin and his minions!
Les boss, les travail au parli.
Woo! We're back.
Here we are back.
We are the Minions, and we're coming back from a very long break, but here to report that the little minion, a minute, is still alive and well.
I would call it a hiatus.
Mm-hmm. It was a hiatus.
But
Nothing more, nothing less. We've got Stuart here talking to me, and I'm Kevin. And you might notice we're short one member of our crew, our minion crew, Bob.
Bob.
For those loyal listeners who might be wondering, where's Bob? Well, part of this kind of explains the long absence that we've had.
He died.
Bob is alive and well. That was a nasty joke on Stuart's part. We would never think of killing Bob, although we have been at each other's throats, to use a kind of human metaphor, even though minions, of course, do not have throats. We've had some difficulties.
Our hands aren't big enough. Like, we could try to ring the throat-ish thing that the minions, like there's a section between. Well, wait, no, I don't know. Is there anything even like a throat at all on a minion?
In
any case, even if we tried to, if we tried to put our hands around the girth of the minion body, I think, right, like a minion hand is too small to strangle it.
It would take millions of minions to strangle dear Bob, and we would never even want to. So
yeah,
let's put that evil thought out of our minds.
Yeah, never.
But dear listeners, we have had some difficulties, and as many of you know, today's episode is a long-awaited episode on the 58th minute of Minions 2015. It is a minute that comes with no small amount of controversy. And we ourselves, even though we like to consider ourselves fellow researchers and, scientists, we fell into what you might call a schism in terms of how this minute was supposed to be interpreted. And let's just say that the authorities were involved. Of 3 countries. There was a missing persons report involved, and the body has not yet been found.
He's alive, but Bob's body hasn't been found. Living body, we don't know.
We don't know
where Bob is.
We think he might be thinking, wherever he is, he's thinking about how wrong he was. In terms of how he interpreted the 58th minute of Minions 2015. And we're sure that he's come to some conclusions, and he'll probably come around soon.
But until he does, he's a coward.
That's right. Some days I hope his body never is found, but I know that's not my minion nature speaking. That's some sort of villainous thought. Not
Right.
not my own.
And it's important to remember that we are not the villains. We are minions.
Every morning, I look at myself in the mirror. I think about Bob's living body floating somewhere around the Caribbean islands or resting somewhere. And I think we are not villains.
Rest in cowardice, Bob.
Anyway, maybe because this minute is just so complicated, it might be good for us to just dive straight in to the text, sort of see it for what it is, and take the plunge. Shall we?
Yeah.
All right. Here comes the 58th minute of Minions. Can you see, Stuart?
Hell yeah.
All right.
I am hours away from becoming the Queen of England.
I know, it's a gas.
I will finally get my crown.
Yum.
It's all I've ever wanted. I'm going to be so happy. But let me ask you something, Fabrice. Does that look like this to you?
Mrs. Overkill. The hair in that picture, it's just two wavy lines.
Oh, so what now? You're an art critic? I drew that when I was 5 years old. Get out of my sight.
Bye, Fabrice! I liked him. He was fun. So what do you think of the dress?
Oh, it's so beautiful. So fashion forward. So Valentino.
Gave you the sweetheart neckline because of my sweetheart.
The high collar and cinched waist reflect a simpler, more violent time. The material...
Okay, so no minions in this one. That's one of the tough things about this movie.
Yes. It was an extremely difficult minute to watch without any minions. It took me several sittings the first time to just get through this minute, and it really was a lot for us to just watch it all the way through. So I'm proud of both of us for doing that.
Mm-hmm. I want to say, I agree that Fabrice was fun. That was true.
Yeah.
And it's almost a shame that she, defenestrated him.
Yeah, it really is. So yeah, for those who couldn't see, we just witnessed a scene in which Fabrice was defenestrated. There was Scarlet Overkill in her new palace room in front of an ornate mirror, and her
we remember from a previous minute that she's like the new mommy, kind of like a strong villain contender, but she threw the minions into a dungeon.
Right.
So the minions are down way below, presumably where this is occurring. The minions are down. The Scarlet Overkill and her boys are up.
That's really important to think about that spatial, because there is like a split second in the beginning of this minute, which seems intentional, where you do see them it's like reminding us, oh, they're in the cellar, they're in the basement, in the dungeon, at this kind of subliminal level, beneath all the action. The movie is asking us to remember, hey, there's minions down there.
Literally subliminal.
Right.
Well,
just
far
down beneath. So that's interesting. So she's up in the palace, and she's looking at herself in the mirror. Her hairdresser Fabrice, who we agree is a fun guy, is giving her some pretty out there haircut. I mean, it's pretty wild. He's giving her. He seems like a true artist.
Yeah, it was weird. It was some diagonal bangs, really puffy and orb shaped around the main head part.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a ponytail off to the side, like a side pony. I don't know if I thought that it looked good, but it was unique. It was something.
Definitely unique. It was a sculpture. And Fabrice himself looked pretty interesting. He has a kind of, how would you describe his body? It's sort of like egg shaped.
Yeah, he looked like some kind of droopy egg, basically.
Mm-hmm. So
And
he's a fun.
his hair was kind of similar to hers. It seemed like he has a signature style, maybe.
Yeah.
And she didn't like that. She was not open to like his aesthetic. You know, she has this very rigid idea of what she wants her hair to look like from when she was 5.
Yes. There's a picture of her that she's using as the sort of standard for how she wants to look, and Fabrice doesn't meet it, so she defenestrates it. She uses some kind of cannon that's inside of her dress to launch him straight out of the palace, like a little rocket. And it leaves this pretty enormous hole in the wall. It's all pretty ghastly, very surprising. I did not think Fabrice would happen to Fabrice. I don't know about you.
I was kind of pulling for him.
Yeah, I think anybody would. He's kind of like the minion stand-in that moment, you know. He's in some ways he's trying to be a little bit of a minion, helping out.
He's a minion. He's a lowercase. Yeah.
Yes. But perhaps, you know, in his inability to really be a minion, he gets jettisoned. Whereas the minions themselves, they can't be jettisoned. They're just locked away, saved for later.
True, she is saving them for later. Yeah. I mean, what would the minions have done with her hair? Do you think that the minions, if they were called on to be hairdressers, do you think that they could have realized her vision of like the 2 wavy lines of hair?
In a way, now that I think about it, the 2 wavy lines of hair sounds a lot like minion hair. I mean, the only minion hair I've seen have just been a couple of little cartoonish lines sticking up, little strands, singular strands of hair.
So, okay, so then this suggests that maybe she is not actually cut out to be a villain. Maybe she wants to be a minion, actually. She doesn't realize it. Like, she has this kind of subconscious jealousy of the minions.
Yeah, and they are locked away deep down. She's, you know, she can't process them, so she just sort of stores them for later.
But she's not jettisoning or defenestrating them. She's not ejecting them from her world. She just doesn't know what to do with them. She's not rejecting. She's just got this like complex that she can't work out properly. So she's got them locked away. And I guess that's what happens with jealousy, right? Is like psychologically you can't deal with the non-identity of the other, right? Like you need them, but you need them to be united with you, but they can't be united. You need to be them to be you. And so it's like this insolvent situation. Like you can't win with jealousy. Like it sticks with you, but it doesn't resolve. It's just this constant problem. And so she has them locked away, maybe in jealousy.
Yeah.
Then again, she is just like intending to use them eventually, I think, right?
I think
Maybe
you're
that's
right.
Part of jealousy too is like you lock away the other person that you're jealous of, or the whatever that you're jealous of, until you can hopefully at some point use them for what you want.
This is all starting to remind me a lot of what happened between us and Bob.
Totally.
Yeah. Don't need to say any more about that.
Me too. Yeah. It's self-evident, I think, to us, and that's all that matters.
Right. For legal reasons, it's all that matters.
So yeah,
I feel like we had talked a little bit before about this minute, and one of the things that we found interesting was just thinking through. We get a sense of Scarlett's real backstory a little bit here, and part of what's making her so villainous is that she's got this fixed idea of herself from age 5 that she's kind of locked into, and she's never really. It's unclear whether she's sort of stuck seeing herself as that, or she hasn't really mourned the loss of that part of herself, and so it's sort of eating away at her. She really just can't let go of this, child's dream, really, of becoming queen when she was 5. Most children, think, okay, I'm going to be an astronaut, going to be the queen, and then they grow out of it. But, what kind of person is unable to maybe grow out of that, and what happens to that person?
I mean, I think that they become like a tyrant, or she's an aspirational tyrant, and maybe not a villain proper. And this is like why she's going to fail ultimately. It's that she just has this simplistic image of queenship that she just has a drawing of. She wants to look just like it. And so she's not able to integrate like the world as she grows. Like she just sticks with that image and then, again, jealously guards it against learning and developing into like a proper villain,
Mm-hmm.
like Gru.
Right.
Gru, I think, seems to be kind of adaptive and not so. The reason that Gru is like a villain and kind of noble in his villainy. I like Gru now, by the way.
Gru pilled
is because he. I know that's anathema on this podcast, but fuck the rules. I don't follow rules unless they're good, and I don't like this anti-Gru rule anyway. The difference between the tyrant Scarlet and Gru, the noble villain, seems to be like the way that Gru's evil visions kind of expand out into the magic of the world. He wants to steal the moon. That's so fucking cool. Whereas she just has this like really immature little fancy of like becoming a queen. She has to look just the right way. That's boring and not poetic at all.
Right. And she seems like unable to really see how disfigured this sort of monomania has made her. Like Gru is a much more self-aware villain. He just is who he is. He knows he's a bad guy. He's just there to cause some mischief. But there is this kind of ridiculous quality to looking at this drawing that she did when she was 5 and wanting to look like it, even though she has so much already. She already has this very interesting haircut. She's unable to see that because she's sort of so deep in this delusion that she can't see how ridiculous her desires are. It's like this like unformed, childlike element that stayed constant within her as the rest of her grew up around it, and it sort of like disfigured everything it touched almost, so that it's like this big blind spot.
So her creative evil libido, you could say, like her villain libido, is stunted and like a plant that never grows from like the sprout stage into a full creature that's actually in touch with the world.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about how this really just sort of in itself really compromises her desire for queenship, paradoxically, because this very obsession without any content, it's like an obsession just in order to realize this ideal vision of herself, is paradoxically that which makes her unfit to be queen, because she couldn't actually carry out the duties of a queen as this sort of stunted person. And that's just interesting to contrast with, we know the minions, including Bob, will become king kind of miraculously by pulling the sword out of the stone. And what is it that makes them fit for kingship? And are they maybe more fit than Scarlet Overkill for royalty?
Or at least to, if not becoming royal themselves, actually, like in a long-term sense, they can kind of access the essence of royalty. They can kind of get it at that moment, at least, because they have this kind of ecstatic union with their world that she doesn't have, because she's all withdrawn into herself and through a child.
Right.
I read parts of Plato's Republic for this about kingship, and I mean, I don't know. I was thinking it's.
Did you say about kingship?
Kingship, yeah, kingship. Same difference. I said, until philosophers are kings, or the kings and princes of this world have the spirit and power of philosophy, and political greatness and wisdom meet in one, and those commoner natures who pursue either to the exclusion of the other are compelled to stand aside. cities will never have rest from their evils, nor the human race, as I believe. And then only will this, our state, have a possibility of life and behold the light of day. So there Plato is talking about exactly like Scarlett's problem. She pursues political power without uniting it with any kind of wisdom. So she doesn't have a means. She can't be a good leader. Because she only has one side of things. She has the ambition to lead without like the content of how the leading could unfold in the world. Because it's all about just her image instead of like a contact with her community, the state.
Right. Exactly. It reminds you, of course, of so many people who seek leadership. I mean, she is just kind of like, her villainy is almost like mundane, because it just seems like so many politicians are probably just like her in this way. She's just sort of like amplifying it with cool gadgets and rockets and stuff like that. And I feel like Scarlet Overkill kind of reveals the sort of like problem of modern kingship or something. Like, I was telling you about the King's Speech, that movie, about the king who, can't remember which one. Yeah, and the whole movie is kind of focused around his stutter, right? And he can't give a speech basically to his people. And so in effect, because his like voice carries the sort of will of the monarchy, he can't actually be king. He's like sort of like incapable of fulfilling his role because of his stutter. And Zizek has this reading of that movie that like the reason he stutters and the reason he can't fulfill the role is just because the role itself is like monstrous. And anybody who has any kind of like conscience basically would just be like crippled with the sort of monstrosity of the role, that you're empowered to lead this sort of enormous empire, this modern sort of empire. And that has something to do with this sort of like the precarity of like the idea of leadership in the absence of some sort of like divine right of authority or something like that, or some sort of like value system in which the authority is embedded. When it's just bare authority over a state, then
because that's just pure form without content.
Right.
What's missing is the content. And it's like, especially in Scarlett's case, I'm thinking of it as like this weird, like tiny little puny form of her child image of the queenship. And then along with that, this impossibly huge form of being the queen of, the whole country. Or probably in her ambition, she would want to be the queen of the whole world. And so there's, first of all, this weird mismatch between the smallness of her image of queenship that she drew, and the impossible hugeness of actually ruling the whole country or the whole world. And then on top of that, how do you actually fill that form out with content? How do you have like a real awareness of the needs of your subjects so that you could be like a well-functioning monarch? Especially if your forms are all fucked up like hers are
right
in the first place. It seems like an impossible task to then fill it with good content.
Mm-hmm.
Actual healthy leadership. She's got an impossible task.
Right.
What politician do you think is most like Scarlet Overkill?
I don't know. I mean, of course the temptation is to say Trump or something, and just sort of like this sort of, this sort of new figure of the kind of like narcissist leader or something like that, who's like seemingly stunted, this kind of stunted person who seems to have really become suited for the role precisely because of how stunted they were, or they're suited to get the role, maybe, if not to actually fulfill it, because of this kind of outsized and crazy obsessive desire.
Trump is like a mega idealist in the classical sense, like idealism versus materialism. He like started when he grew up, he was like indoctrinated by like new age philosophy, like the power of positive thinking and the kind of manifestation stuff. He really believes that like you can change the world directly with your thoughts or what that shit. He's like, that's where he comes from. That's what his whole thing is. That bad side of New Age.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's wild. Yeah, you can trace Trump all the way back to Madame Blavatsky. Pretty directly. Trump is a Blavatsky. Really.
This is a kind of a cult.
Yes. Yeah. He grew up in, I don't remember what it was called, but it was like this New Thought, maybe. I think it's called New Thought. Yeah. Trump is a New Thought person. Anyway, yeah, Scarlett is also an idealist and not a materialist in that same way, because she just wants to like short circuit royalty just through the image, the picture of herself with the two wavy strands of hair.
It makes me wonder if where the minions fall into this. Are they the kind of, I mean, because they never, of course, want this royalty, and then they do in fact get it, at least for a time. Bob pulls the sword from the stone by accident and becomes sort of de facto king, and so they get the royalty for a few hours, I guess, before Scarlet Overkill takes it. Yeah,
they never think about that idea. They're just like moving and doing, and so they are material. They're like material. They're not even materialists. They're just pure force of matter.
Right. Yeah. They just sort of
actually make shit happen physically.
Right. They don't pronounce anything. They don't use their power in any way. All they do is just sort of run around in the palace.
They're not alienated from their power as a thing that can be used. They're the same as their power. They're identical to power. They don't like wield power. They are power.
Right. Yeah. The only thing they ever do is later on, there's the Stewart's concert that we already talked about. I feel like that's the only exercise of their authority or anything that happens. Stewart performs a guitar solo.
And I think it's improvised. So it's not even, that's still pure like movement, like just force without form.
Right.
They're pure content. Just moving.
So maybe if the minions are the sort of platonic ideal of a ruler who doesn't want to rule, and even they're a ruler who like doesn't even use the rule, it's this crazy wisdom.
Yeah, you were breaking up there again, so I don't know exactly what you said, but yeah, crazy wisdom. it's like so I'm reading, I don't know, I'm reading The Flowering Wand by Sophie Strand. It's really cool. And she talks about a lot of stuff, but one of the things that she likes is distributed intelligence, like the extended mind. So very anti-Cartesian cogito, like the mind is constituted by relations of the creature to its, neighbors, its environment, everything that's going on around it. The mind comes from the contact between the individual and the world, not self-contained somehow. Like because if you had a purely self-contained being without any kind of contact with otherness, then what would it think about? The mind has to have some input in order to be the mind. And so it's all relational. And so maybe the minions are that kind of relational mentality par excellence. They're just like the way that they function as like a distributed mind. This is back to minion mind, right? Like they have this kind of stigmergetic hive thinking thing. It's like mob thought that is anarchic but is very effective, very like strong, joyful.
Yeah. And it's just that kind of power that Scarlet is trying to lock away, maybe, and is jealous of. Maybe that's sort of really the root of her jealousy, that she knows she can't have that and she can't be it.
She can't think with the world, so she's trying to capture a tool that can think with the world so she can have that power.
Right. And in some level, she knows she knows how disfigured she is, and she knows that she can't really rule the way that she wants, maybe on some level. And whatever.
Well, she hasn't become queen yet, and so maybe she's smart enough to know that she needs something like the minions.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that, I mean, the way we're talking right now, it makes me just remember how foolish Bob's theories about this minute were, and how lucky we are to have really reestablished a kind of another mode of talking about this minute.
Yeah, I miss Bob, but I'm glad he's missing.
I miss Bob too. I just, I'm just thinking about how vicious the schism really felt at the time, and the way that we were each screaming the word Fabricio. The word Fabricio is sort of seared into my mind as this kind of violent, almost curse. Just thinking about the way we were seeing it, saying it, and tearing at each other's clothes.
We were each saying the same word, but the same name, Fabricio, but it meant such heart-rendingly different things from each of our mouths.
Right.
And luckily, of course, our different ways of saying Fabricio were commensurable and got along well. But oh my God, what he meant when he said Fabricio, so cowardly.
It was chillingly
so
cowardly. Yeah.
So jealous.
So jealous. It's almost like he wanted to get defenestrated. I mean, never mind.
Do you think we can reconcile with Bob? I think we can reconcile with Bob.
I hope. If the minions are any evidence, maybe we can look to their example for a way to kind of unite in spite of our differences. We can try forgiveness. If only Bob gives up his wretched ideas.
And his cowardice.
Yes. So we're waiting for you, Bob.
Okay. I think that's our episode. It's definitely more than 20 or 30 minutes, which we said it was going to be 20 or 30 minutes, but we lie all the time.
We're minions.
We're dastardly. We're minions. Fuck y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Wait. No, not bye. We have to pick our next minute.
Right. All right. I'll roll the die this time.
You have the die? I just made a new die.
Oh.
But if you want to use the old die.
Well, no, let's use your new one.
I made it out of paper.
That's pretty impressive.
So, yeah, here we go.
If only Bob were here to roll this.
Here, okay, I'm rolling the die. Okay. What did I get? I mean, here, I'll show you what I got.
I can read. 71.
Hey!
All right.
That's only 2 away from 69, and 69 is a funny number.
Really funny number. Okay, hang on. Have we done this one before? 71, you think? Oh yeah, here we go.
We've only done 7, 8 minutes at all, so it seems unlikely. Let's see though.
You ready?
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Say bye-bye, Bob. Bye-bye.
Come Macano! Pepani de Mortis! Huh?
Wait, what? How did he? Hold my bear.
Jesus, that was so intense. Oh my God.
It's an action sequence. So this is going to be a really exciting next episode. It might be hard to contain it in 20 minutes, but we'll try our best.
We will, though. It'll be 20 minutes.
Exactly,
Definitely.
20 minutes. Well,
okay. Bye.
Thanks, crew.